You stand at a crossroads of consciousness where the old story of being someone's second choice dies, and the magnificent truth of your divine worth is born. This is not about revenge or proving anyone wrong. This is about the fundamental spiritual law that governs all human relationships. We can only receive the treatment we believe we deserve. The person who once relegated you to backup status is about to learn the costliest lesson of their lifetime. Not because you will seek to teach it, but because the universe itself has a way of correcting our misperceptions about value. When someone fails to recognize gold, they inevitably end up with fool's brass in their hands, wondering how they could have been so blind. The greatest tragedy in human relationships is not being chosen second, it is believing that being chosen second defines your worth. This belief is nothing more than a mental prison you have constructed with your own thoughts. And like all prisons of the mind, you hold the key to your own freedom. When someone treats you as their backup plan, they are not revealing your worth. They are revealing their spiritual blindness. They are demonstrating their inability to recognize true value when it stands before them. But here's the profound spiritual truth that will transform your entire perspective. Their inability to see your worth has absolutely nothing to do with your actual worth. You are not a backup plan. You are not a consolation prize. You are not someone's second choice. These are simply roles you have temporarily accepted because somewhere deep in your consciousness, you believed you deserved no better. But belief, no matter how deeply held, does not alter truth. The diamond does not become glass because someone mistakes it for glass. The moment you begin to understand this principle, everything changes. The person who saw you as secondary suddenly finds themselves in a position where they must confront their own blindness. They begin to see what they so carelessly set aside. They witness your true radiance as you step into the fullness of who you really are. And in that witnessing, their biggest regret is born. This is not about manipulation or games. This is about the natural law of spiritual alignment. When you align with your true worth, when you stop accepting crumbs and demand the feast that is your birthright, the universe conspires to show you, and everyone else, exactly how valuable you have always been. The person who once had the privilege of your love, your attention, your energy, suddenly realizes they have been living in poverty while riches were freely offered to them. They begin to understand that what they thought was easily replaceable was actually irreplaceable. What they assumed would always be available has become magnificently unavailable. Your transformation from backup to irreplaceable does not happen overnight, but it happens with certainty once you begin to do the inner work. You must first stop seeing yourself through their eyes and begin seeing yourself through the eyes of truth. You must cease measuring your value by their recognition and start measuring it by the divine standard that has always declared you precious beyond measure. When you were accepting the role of backup, you were unconsciously agreeing to be undervalued. You were participating in your own diminishment. But consciousness, once awakened, cannot remain asleep. Once you truly grasp that you are not anyone's second choice, that you are a first-class creation of the universe itself, everything in your external world must shift to match this new understanding. The person who failed to appreciate you when you were freely giving of yourself now finds themselves in the position of having lost something they cannot replace. They discover that what they thought was common was actually rare. What they believed was ordinary was actually extraordinary. And in this discovery lies their deepest regret. This transformation is not about becoming someone different. It is about becoming who you have always been beneath the layers of false beliefs about your worth. It is about shedding the skin of acceptance of less than treatment and stepping into the royal robes of your true identity. The universe has a perfect justice system. It ensures that those who fail to recognize value when it is freely given will eventually hunger for that very value when it is no longer available to them. This is not vindictive justice. This is corrective justice. It teaches everyone involved the true principles of appreciation and recognition. As you rise in consciousness about your own worth, you become a living demonstration of what was lost. You become walking proof of the magnitude of their error in judgment, not because you are trying to prove anything, but because truth, when lived authentically, needs no proof. It simply radiates its own evidence. The painful awakening for those who treated you as secondary comes when they realize that secondary was never what you were. Secondary was simply how they chose to see you. And in that moment of clarity, they understand that they have committed the greatest error of their relationship life. They have let go of treasure while convinced they were holding on to trouble. The most profound spiritual principle you can ever learn is this: others can only love you to the extent that you love yourself. They can only value you to the degree that you value yourself. They can only see your worth to the level that you recognize your own worth. This means that every person who has ever treated you as secondary was simply reflecting back to you your own self-perception. This is not blame. This is empowerment, because once you understand that the external world is a mirror of your internal world, you realize you have the power to change everything by changing one thing: how you see yourself. When you truly begin to recognize your divine worth, not as a mental concept but as a lived reality, everything in your life must rearrange itself to match this new self-recognition. The people who could not see your value either develop new eyes or remove themselves from your life. There is no middle ground when you are living from authentic self-worth. The person who once saw you as backup now finds themselves confronted with someone who no longer accepts backup status from anyone, anywhere, under any circumstances. They witness a transformation so complete that it forces them to question everything they thought they knew about you. They see strength where they once saw weakness. They see confidence where they once saw insecurity. They see someone who has become magnificently unavailable for anything less than the very best. This unavailability is not born from anger or resentment. It is born from recognition. When you truly know your worth, you cannot pretend to be worth less. When you have tasted your own divine value, you cannot go back to feeding on the crumbs of half-hearted affection or partial commitment. The profound irony is that the person who made you their backup plan has actually done you the greatest favor possible. They have forced you to confront your own acceptance of less than treatment. They have pushed you into a corner where you had only two choices: continue to diminish yourself or rise to your full stature. By choosing to rise, you have discovered a strength you never knew you possessed. Now they watch as you command the very treatment they were unwilling to give. They observe as others recognize immediately what they were blind to for so long. They witness your natural magnetism drawing in people who see your value instantly, without question, without hesitation, and in this witnessing, their regret deepens with each passing day. The person who relegated you to backup status now realizes they have created their own biggest loss. They see that in trying to keep you as an option, they have lost you as a possibility. In treating you as dispensable, they have made themselves dispensable to you. In failing to choose you when you were choosing them, they have guaranteed that you will never choose them again. This is the spiritual law of reciprocity in action. What we give out returns to us multiplied. The energy of you're good enough for now returns as you're not good enough anymore. The consciousness that says, I can do better than you, eventually encounters the reality that says, they did do better than you, they did better than the old you, who accepted such treatment. Your worth was never up for debate. It was never dependent on their recognition. It was never contingent on their choice. Your worth is a fundamental fact of your existence, as unchanging as the law of gravity, as constant as the rising sun. The only variable has been your recognition of this truth. When you begin to live from this recognition, when you begin to carry yourself as someone of immense value because that is exactly what you are, the world takes notice. People begin to treat you differently because you are treating yourself differently. Opportunities that once seemed closed become open. Relationships that once seemed impossible become inevitable. The person who saw you as secondary now realizes they were measuring you by their own limited capacity for recognition, not by your unlimited capacity for magnificence. They discover that their inability to see your worth was a statement about their vision, not a statement about your value, and in this discovery they confront the most painful realization of all. They have let go of someone whose worth they were never qualified to judge in the first place. The moment has arrived when the tables turn completely. The person who once held the power to choose you or not choose you finds themselves in a position where the choice is no longer theirs to make. They have moved from the position of selector to the position of the one hoping to be selected. This reversal is not your doing, it is the natural result of your elevation. When you rise to the level of consciousness where you know, not hope, not wish, not believe, but know, that you are worthy of the very best that life has to offer, something miraculous happens. You become the very best that life has to offer someone else. You transform from someone hoping to be chosen to someone others hope will choose them. This transformation is so profound that it reaches back through time and recontextualizes every moment of your relationship with the person who made you their backup. They begin to see that every time they chose someone else over you, they were actually choosing less over more. Every time they made you wait while they explored other options, they were making themselves wait for happiness that was standing right in front of them. The regret they experience is not the shallow regret of missing out on something good. It is the deep, soul-shaking regret of realizing they have missed out on something irreplaceable. They understand now that what they thought was easily found elsewhere exists nowhere else on earth. The unique combination of qualities that make you who you are, your way of loving, your way of caring, your way of being present, cannot be replicated or replaced. They watch as you move through the world with a new kind of confidence, a confidence that comes not from external validation, but from internal recognition of your own divine nature. They see you attracting people who recognize your value immediately, without question, without hesitation. They witness others giving you effortlessly what they struggled to give you half-heartedly. This is when their biggest regret crystallizes into full awareness. They had access to something precious, and they treated it as ordinary. They had the opportunity to be with someone extraordinary, and they convinced themselves that extraordinary was too much to expect. They had the chance to choose love, and they chose convenience instead. But here is what they discover too late: convenience is temporary, but love is eternal. What seems easier in the moment often becomes much harder in the long run. The person they thought was too much trouble to choose wholeheartedly becomes the person they would give anything to have choose them. Your elevation serves a purpose beyond your own happiness. It serves as a correction in the universe's ledger. It demonstrates that value, when not recognized by one person, will inevitably be recognized by another. It proves that what is meant for you cannot be permanently kept from you, and what is not meant for you cannot be permanently held onto. The person who made you their backup plan now experiences the profound emptiness of realizing that their first choice was actually their worst choice. They understand that in trying to do better than you, they have ended up with much worse than you. In seeking to upgrade from you, they have actually downgraded from you. This realization comes in waves. First, they notice how different you seem: stronger, more radiant, more self-possessed. Then they begin to see how others respond to this new version of you. With immediate respect, with genuine interest, with wholehearted appreciation. Finally, they confront the devastating truth: the person they are seeing now was always there, waiting to be recognized, waiting to be valued, waiting to be chosen. The tragedy of their situation is not that you changed, it is that you had to change without them. The growth they are witnessing, the confidence they are observing, the magnetism they are feeling, all of this could have been theirs to enjoy if they had recognized your worth when it was freely available to them. Now they find themselves in the position of every person who has ever failed to recognize value when it was present. They are haunting the places where that value used to be, hoping for another chance that will never come. They are offering now what they were unwilling to offer then, not understanding that the window for such offerings has permanently closed. You have become their biggest regret, not because you sought revenge, but because you sought yourself. You found the version of yourself that refuses to accept less than your worth. You discovered the part of yourself that will not negotiate your value downward to make others comfortable with choosing you. You uncovered the aspect of yourself that would rather be alone than be with someone who sees you as optional. This is your redemption and their reckoning. This is your elevation and their education. This is your victory and their revelation that they have been playing a game they could never win. The game of taking for granted someone whose value is infinite. The final truth they must confront is perhaps the most painful of all. You were never their backup plan. You were their best plan, and they were too blind to see it. You were never their second choice. You were their first choice, and they were too foolish to make it. You were never less than what they deserved. They were less than what you deserved. And now, as they watch you live in the fullness of your worth, as they see you command the respect they failed to give, as they witness others celebrate what they took for granted, they understand completely that their failure to recognize your value when it was available to them will remain the biggest regret of their lifetime. You have moved from being someone's backup to being their biggest regret, not through any action against them but through every action for yourself. You have claimed your true position in the universe, not as someone hoping to be chosen, but as someone others hope will do the choosing. This is not just your transformation, this is your triumph.